Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you've had a nice day. And we are speaking today with the National Centre of Writing, and we've got these two lovely guest speakers, Steph and Peggy.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. Thanks for having us. Very nice to be here.
So for people who might not be as familiar with your website, would you just like to summarise what you do?
Peggy, if I let you summarise, and then I'll sort of give everyone a whistle-stop tour of some of our channels and where you can find us.
It sounds good. It's it's quite difficult to summarize what we do because we've got, I don't know if you've had a little nosy around the website already.
I have. I've had a little browse of the website. Really good layout.
Busy.
Good. Oh, good. We do a lot. We do a lot of different activities. I suppose we're a literature house. We're based in Norwich, which is England's first UNESCO City of Literature, and we've got a beautiful building, which is an old medieval trading hall. It was built in the 15th century, and now it's where our HQ is. We're not there presently, obviously, because of COVID, but we've got our office there, and we've got a classroom space, and we've got a 120-seater venue. And we have a cottage on site where we welcome writers and translators from all over the world. And we have a series of little writers' rooms. And the activities we do, I mean, they're from everything from sort of talent development for writers, which I'm sure we'll speak more about. So different programs that give writers access to the tools and the skills and the people and the networks that they need to progress and to build sustainable careers. We work with children and young people in and out of school. We build festivals and courses and all sorts. So basically, in a nutshell, I suppose, our sort of mission and our vision is to enable people to tell those stories and to share those stories with as wide a range of people as possible through all those different means. Steph, how did I do? Did that?
Yeah, perfect. Got it in a nutshell. It is difficult to summarise what we do. Yeah, and I just add to that, apart from our physical site in Norwich at our venue at Dragon Hall, there are lots of other ways that you can kind of access us online. So we've got the website, which is nationalcentreforwriting.org.uk. And it's a really busy website. We've got information about a lot of our programs up there. We have events listings and workshop listings. We have a really busy blog sort of article and features area where we feature lots of commissions from writers, lots of practical top tip articles, some videos and some podcasts as well. So yeah, the website is sort of our first port of call for information. We're on social media. We're on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. So we're posting throughout the day, every day on all of those channels, talking a lot about the work that we do, but also sharing lots of opportunities that come through to us from, local, national, international partners. We have a newsletter, which is something that I lead on a weekly basis. So if you go onto our website and join up to our National Centre for Writing newsletter, you get a weekly sort of roundup of all of the opportunities that we've got coming up. Again, as well as some listings from sort of related literature partners. We have a Discord channel, which I think we'll talk about a bit more later, but that's very much an online community, completely free for people to sign up to, where we are talking all the time to writers from across the world. Writers are sharing their own writing, top tips, ways to stay productive and motivated with your writing at home, particularly in lockdown. We've got a book club that we use the Discord channel to talk about the book club on there. Lots of different areas for chat, actually. It's a really great way to sort of build into a wider writing community across the world and speak to like-minded people. We've also got the Writing Life podcast, which is our weekly podcast that goes out and very much focuses on the writer journey, and we speak to different types of writers every single week, from sort of screenwriters, novelists, short story writers. I recently spoke to a narrative non-fiction writer. We've had game design writers, people who write for video games, all kinds of things on there, and that's a weekly podcast. And we've also got our YouTube channel where we post, we're hosting a lot of events at the moment. That's sort of primarily where our events are taking place during COVID and lockdown. But we also include, I think we'll be looking to include more videos from podcast conversations and things like that going forward. So that's a quick roundup of our sort of digital channels where you can find us online.
Yeah, so speaking about the types of people you feature, on your website you mentioned the success stories that you experienced. Would you like to talk a bit more about those?
Absolutely. Yes, I will. I'm going to pop it into the chat if that's all right, in case people want to follow along, because we've got quite a lot of brilliant writers and artists that we've worked with, and this is just a way, just in case people want to have a little look while we're chatting. This is just a way for us to both celebrate the work that we do and the support that we give to writers, and also to sort of boost them when they've got some great news and when that support has kind of led them to publication or to win a prize or whatever, any one of a number of brilliant successes. Then we can kind of say, look at this great writer and their achievement. So if you fancy looking along as we go, but I'll just maybe pick out a couple. I think also this is a way that we can evidence the range of work that we do. You'll encounter a lot of different people here that have come through lots of different parts of our program, and I think one of the things that we're really interested in is basically writer pathways, not just as a writer. Are you all writers here? Is everyone here sort of studying writing or publishing or? Yes, yes. Yeah. But this is a way for us to show, that there's a real pathway both through us as an organisation, but for writers to kind of to get the skills and the networks that they need. So just look at this, for example, a very new case study is with Ellie Percy, and Ellie has just published their book, which is really exciting. And they were on a programme with us several years ago now called Escalator. And this is a way I'm going to talk to you a little bit more maybe about some of the programs that we run and the ways that we specifically support writers. So Ellie was on Escalator, which is our talent development program for writers, very specifically in our region. So as Steph said, our work, we're based in Norwich. We've got a national remit. We work internationally with partners and friends and festivals all over the world, but we also work very closely with writers in our region. And Ellie was based in Suffolk at the time, and they've just published their novel Duck Feet. So the Escalator program really is to give writers access to a mentor. So they have a very sort of connected relationship with an established writer where they get to kind of learn the ropes and ask questions and feel really supported. They get access to industry advice. So we set up a kind of a welcome weekend and a residential weekend where they come and see us at Dragon Hall, and they get to meet their peers and they get to meet publishers and agents and find out just a bit of a demystifying of the whole process of being a writer and how it all works. They get to showcase their work to agents and to publishers. And ideally what should happen there is that they've come through the program and then they get to showcase their work, and hopefully an agent or a publisher will be there and will snap them up and say, you're brilliant, I want to publish you, or I want to represent you. So that's Escalator, and that's our longest running program as the centre. But we've got lots and lots of different programs. So for example, Ditto or Emerging Translation Mentorship Program. So I don't know if anyone here is interested in translation or considering that as an option for themselves. But equally, it's a program where we pair an emerging translator with a more established translator, and they have a similar process to the Escalator program. So one of those is a translator called Rachel Rankin. And just recently, Rachel, we were really excited. She's just submitted her first book to the end. So she's just done her first co-translation, and it's just been submitted for editing, and it's going to be published. So these are the kind of successes that we want to really, really celebrate of people who've come through our programs. But you'll see there that there's a whole range. There's our Lit from the Inside program. That's for much younger, sort of 14 to 17-year-olds. And that's for anyone who's interested in a career in the arts. So yes, maybe as a writer, but maybe more in the kind of job that Steph and I have, which is in a sort of support capacity in the back forest, as it were, helping people find the tools they need. We've got our Young Norfolk writing competition, some lovely case studies from that, from young people who've won and gone on to really lovely to have a cat with us. Always good to have a feline here. We've got people there from our early career awards. So I guess the case study section is a way of saying, look at this range of stuff that we do, and also look at the range of writers. There's no one size fits all when it comes to writing, as I'm sure you're all discovering. There are lots of different paths to being published and to having a life and a career as a writer. So that's a way of us saying, look, here are all the different ways that you can live a life as a writer.
Yeah. So obviously you've worked with a lot of people, you've seen a lot of emerging writers and trying out writers, and obviously you've seen that the kind of obstacles they face. If you were to give advice, and if you were to tell someone about some problems that you've seen, what kind of obstacles have you seen people go through throughout the editing, throughout the writing, and their getting published, and how do you think those people overcame those problems, or how do you think they found the solutions to overcome it?
I think we find we get lots of writers at different stages of their writing journeys coming to us all the time and asking questions, and sort of troubleshooting and needing help and advice. And there are a lot of common obstacles, I think. Obviously everyone's writing journey is unique, but we do often find that the same things crop up. So we do try and offer really useful resources and opportunities for writers at all stages of their career writing journey. So firstly, we have tons of resources for writers who are just getting started. Obviously, when you're at the very beginning of just starting to write or writing in a new form, we regularly upload lots of free articles and practical tips, which you'll find if you go onto our website and look under the blog section. We often ask a lot of the writers that we kind of work with, that we've recently had some writers in residence from across the world, and they were submitting sort of top 5 practical tips for writers in their genre, so non-fiction writers, kind of giving their 5 best tips for anyone who's trying out non-fiction for the first time. So lots of free articles and practical tips coming up through the website. We offer some short self-paced online courses as well, some of which are completely free of charge to join up to, some of which are on a slightly you pay for, but we're sort of talking about kind of £75 for a short course which you can study online in your own time. And some of those courses offer things like how to stay productive with your writing, because it's not always, people don't always want the practical tips, the nitty-gritty of how I'm writing within a certain genre, but it might just be how to develop a writing routine, or how to fit writing around your day job, how to those sorts of things really is kind of the productivity, how to stay happy and write regularly, how to get past writer's block. We've got kind of courses, short online courses which address those in particular, and you get advice direct from some writers who have been through it themselves. Trying to think of what else we do. We've got so much. Routes to publication is another great one as well. We often get people coming to us asking, I'm looking to get published, but I'm not entirely sure how to go about it. And there are lots of different ways to get published nowadays. So there's, a more traditional route through a publishing house, but there's also lots of different ways to self-publish now. And we often run workshops with people from different publishing houses, which advise on how to pitch to a publisher, how to really research in advance and make sure you find the publishing house that's exactly right for you, or the agent that's right for you, because so many publishing houses cover different areas and specialize in different things. So we often run through our Writers Toolkit program, which you'll also find on our website, and at the moment a lot of that is happening online rather than in person, workshops and question and answer sort of Q&A sessions about whether to go down a traditional route or a self-publishing route. And again, as Peggy mentioned, we've got a few case studies on our website as well for writers who were at that point and weren't quite sure which way to go. And they've now since found an avenue that really works for them and for the stories that they're telling. We get a lot of people asking about how to edit their work. So just last weekend on Saturday morning, we had a 2-hour editor insight session with Ella Mitchell, who works in a publishing house and is a very experienced editor. So she was talking about different types of editing, how to prepare your manuscript in advance of going to pitching to an agent, how to improve your self-editing skills, because that can be very important. So editing comes up a lot as well. So we have a lot of podcasts through the Writing Life that talk about editing. and really getting your manuscript into shape before you show it to someone. And the other two things actually that come up regularly are gaining confidence in yourself. So again, going to a sort of a short bite-sized workshop with us or with someone else online can be a great way to meet a small group of people, maybe 15 or so people, and to, you know, maybe share your work if you're feeling confident, hear from others about what they're going through. You often find that everyone's experiencing the same things you are when you're writing at home alone. So that's a really great way of gaining confidence, and a lot of our online workshops are great for that. We run a great series of workshops with or courses with UEA, with their creative writing school, and they're a great way to sort of chat to other students and chat to a tutor and develop your confidence in your craft. And the other thing is sort of related to confidence, I guess, is just being part of that writing community. Writing can feel like quite a solitary act, I think, sometimes. And we get a lot of people emailing and speaking to us on social media and saying, how can I be part of that bigger writing community? How can I meet like-minded people? And our Discord channel in particular is a really great way of doing that. And you'll often find that the best advice comes from other people that you meet on that channel that you're just chatting to. You know, you can say, help, I've got writer's block, I need to play around with this plot idea, can someone give me, you know, some tips, some advice? And just getting that peer-to-peer feedback, I think, is really important. So I think those are the areas that we get the most questions about. It's kind of the practical, you know, how do I write a fiction story? How do I, you know, craft a short story or poetry? You know, what's the best route for publication for me? How do I prepare and edit a manuscript? And how do I find other like-minded writers? I think they're the main obstacles that people tend to write to us about. And as I say, we try and provide as many free and paid for resources at different levels that will really help people out.
Yeah, so obviously you've spoken to a lot of people, and with COVID, obviously everyone's trying to stay at home, and I feel like with everyone trying to stay at home, they're all finding new hobbies and tasks, and I feel like a lot of people have taken on writing, and with that, a lot of people talk about creative block within COVID. What's your take on that? Do you hear it more or less, or have you heard of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a lot of that around. You know, I think COVID has just been so, you know, enormous and life-changing for people. And certainly, I mean, I'm personally not a writer, but as a reader, and I'm sure maybe others here feel the same, but I just found it quite difficult, really, to read, especially in when the very first lockdown came along. And I just found I kept starting books and putting them back down again, and, you know, had piles of books that had been, you know, not quite what I wanted to read at the time. And short stories, you know, I found were actually a great way to get past that particular kind of block, because they're a moment in time, aren't they? Stories, they're not committing to a full enormous novel or a big nonfiction book. They're kind of they transport you in that little moment in time. So yeah, I think we have seen a lot of that. And I think as well, because our program, especially the one all of the program, the digital kind of online program and the one in person, you know, its real main aim is to keep people connected and to encourage them to be confident and to be creative. And so I guess our challenge as the National Centre was, how do we, you know, continue to keep people feeling that sense of togetherness when we have to be apart? And so that was a really big part of it. And see Steph sharing the Discord community, that's quite a new platform for us. And that was very much a way of trying to bring people together, to be able to share common concerns, to share anxieties, and to stay connected to one another. Some of our events that would have happened in person and will again. So when they get started again, and if you find yourselves in Norwich, for example, we have a monthly meetup in person in our venue called the Salon, or the Social. Actually, we changed its name, Steph, didn't we? The Social, and it's basically just a come along, have a little beverage, have a little mingle with people. And in a time where we couldn't do that, and when we couldn't kind of invite people to be together, we had to find other ways to do that online. And one such was Discord. We have a book club. And again, I think a big part of COVID has been giving people sort of help in making decisions about things a little bit. So for example, saying, here's a book that we're reading, you might want to join in and read this book with us. So we've got an NCW book club. And what we do there is we shine a light on an artist that we're working with somewhere else in the program. So at the minute, we've got a wonderful associate artist called Karani Baraka. and Oka's second poetry collection is just about to come out. So we thought it would be a really nice opportunity to amplify her first collection. And we've got people reading that with us at the minute. It's called Rope. And I'd really recommend, if anyone here likes poetry, it's really brilliant stuff. So that was a way. Another way was I took on the role for a little while as a bibliotherapist. So I'm sure people know that's someone you might come to a kind of what should I be reading now? I feel this way. What book might help? So I got to do that for a little bit during lockdown, where people would say, I feel terrible, or I'm feeling anxious, or I want to read a book that will make me forget what's going on. And I had to try and come up with some books that might distract or to make them feel better. So that was great. But we've also, as Steph, I think, said, we've got, lots of different sessions around, I think, trying to give a structure to people's writing and to give that community. So we've got drop-in writing time sessions. They were in the building, where we would just keep the building open a bit later than normal, and we would encourage people to come along and drop in and meet a community and just write. Basically, that was the whole plan. And so we were able to shift that online, which of course has been able to reach many more people than we could have reached in person in Norwich. We've got our online workshops that have brought people together and kept people motivated. So I think it's just providing the kind of tools and the structures and the friendly faces, to say you're not alone. It's not just you who's having a miserable time trying to get the words out. So we tried to do that, and we continue to try to do that, and try to give people those sorts of tools. Anything else, Steph, that I've missed that we've been doing creatively?
I was only going to add really that when I've been interviewing writers for the podcast, one of my final questions has been, how has lockdown been? Have you managed to write? And the answers are so different. Everyone has a different answer. A lot of people have said, I couldn't do anything, to begin with. Now I'm getting back into it. Other people found it, I really liked that intensive time at home. I could really focus. But the answer is it's completely different for everyone. And I think there's something quite nice and reassuring about that, actually, to know that there isn't, you're not doing it wrong. It doesn't matter if you've got, you're not in the right headspace to be, writing at the moment, or writing on the project that you were working on before all of this happened. Even if you join the drop-in writing time and just do, a few quick exercises for a couple of hours once every fortnight, you're doing a bit of writing. It kind of really helps. So I think a lot of people actually during this time have needed reassurance that they're not going crazy, and that, taking some downtime, just picking up a bit of reading here and there, or a bit of writing can, everyone's experiencing it differently. So I would say we've definitely heard a lot of people reading and writing in different ways in the past year, and there's no right way to do it. Everyone's been a little bit different, but there have been these really nice touch points, as Peggy mentioned, that we've been able to kind of catch up with people, meet online, and just have a chat about what we're doing, what we're interested in, and just kind of keep everyone connected.
Yeah, so obviously I think with lockdown, you've mentioned your Discord account, and one thing I feel like has emerged within lockdown is a podcast and kind of mukbangs and just talking about random things that people might be interested in. Do you think if lockdown hadn't come around, you would have? So do you think your Discord account came with lockdown, or is it something you're already planning but just came out a bit sooner, or it was something already planned?
It's a good question. I mean, we had started, I think we were thinking about Discord before the pandemic. So it was something that my colleague Simon in the comms team, it's something he's been aware of through the gaming community, I think, quite a lot, and also the writing community. It's something that he's used sort of in his personal life that he thought was really useful for building a community. So we had been talking about it pre-pandemic. But it definitely is something that we focused on a lot more when all of this came about. And I think it came to the forefront of our thinking in terms of what can we do to connect people online. And it certainly meant that we could connect more writers across a bigger geographic area. So as Peggy said, we had some, lots of regulars coming in for our drop-in writing time at Dragon Hall, but people in America, people in Australia, people all over the world couldn't get involved in that in the same way. So we had, I think, I can't remember when we started Discord. I think it was sort of summer last year. It feels like it was around summer last year. And I mean, the last time I checked, we had about 800 writers on there. Maybe it's even more now. So that's happened so quickly. And I do think it is, I think a large part of that has been because of lockdown and because of the pandemic. But I think that now that community is sort of established, I think people will stick around afterwards as well, because it's just been such a lovely way to unite people, really.
Yeah, and you obviously you mentioned your podcast as well, which I feel like a lot of people you just listen whilst they're doing other stuff. Do you have any tips of how you can express yourself within podcasts? Because obviously you can't see your face; it's just your voices. So like the kind of topics you talk about, the tone of voice you would use.
I mean, firstly, I love podcasts. I'm a big fan of podcasts. And I co-host the Writing Life podcast with Simon. And that was very much a passion project for both of us, I think. We've done podcasts in our personal lives as well. And we love listening to them and talking about them. So I think my advice would be, if you were thinking of starting a podcast, firstly, podcasting is great because you don't need to invest lots of money into doing it. You don't need loads of expensive tech. You don't need to be, it doesn't need to be a very polished production from a studio. As long as you have a very authentic voice and you're telling an interesting story, people will listen. So I listen to a whole range of podcasts, from, very produced BBC podcasts through to things that are very lo-fi, that you can tell are being recorded from someone's home with a computer, a USB microphone. And as long as what they're talking about is authentic and feels real, feels natural, and it's something unique that others aren't necessarily talking about from the same angle, I think you'll find listeners. And literature in particular, and writing, I don't think there's that many podcasts out there at the moment that are focused on those areas, really. So if you can come up with, if you can research what is already out there and come up with an idea that is quite focused in a particular area. So I've said before that ours is the writing life. So we've got so many projects, and we could have made a podcast about anything, and we could have also made a podcast that tries to cover everything that we do, which would be very complicated. We try to focus in on the writing life, interviewing writers about their writing journey, where did they begin, how they got into what they do now, any kind of stumbling blocks or any sort of, meandering pathways they took. We often talk to writers who say, I went in thinking I wanted to be a novelist, and I ended up developing an entire career in journalism and non-fiction in a way that I never expected. It's all of these sort of journeys and stumbling blocks and sort of really practical tips. It's that journey part that we've decided to really focus on, which I don't think there were any other podcasts out there that were really focusing on that. So if you've got an idea and a key focus point that you can always circle back to with your interviews as well, always kind of come back to this main focus point of your podcast, I think that's really useful. Interview wise, I mean, it kind of makes sense to say do your research and prepare in advance as much as you can, but also be flexible and have quite a natural conversation. The great thing about podcasting is that you can do it from home. You can interview anyone anywhere from home or from the office, and you can record it in advance. So you can have a chat. It can be quite informal. If anything needs editing out or switching around, you can do that, which I think puts people at ease quite a lot as well, when you explain that, things can be left on the cutting room floor if they're not quite right. That's really important. And also it's worth keeping in mind that podcasts are cheap, because all you might need is a £30 plug-in USB microphone and you're ready to go, and that's great. And you can download free editing software and things like that from the internet. But podcasting is time consuming. So for us, we create this weekly podcast, and it may be sort of an hour to an hour and a half long, the podcast itself, but that involves, in the background, we need to schedule interviews, actually do the interviews, which usually take an hour to an hour and a half. The editing is probably double that time, so you're talking 3 hours. So it is it's a time consuming process. So you need to make sure you do have the time to commit to it, and you don't necessarily have to have a weekly podcast. You can do a a fortnightly podcast, monthly, or a season of podcasts. So it might not be something that you do throughout the year. You might do one season of podcasts a year, but once you've decided on a schedule, sticking to that schedule is quite important. And the other thing to keep in mind is that building a listenership for a podcast does take time. So you might find that if you decide to launch a writing podcast or a literature podcast, you might get a big spike in listeners to begin with, which is really encouraging because everyone's like, oh, new podcast to listen to. And then that listenership will dip right down and you might feel like you're stuck with not many listeners for a while. And it's a really gradual process of keeping to that schedule, telling those stories. And yeah, as I was saying, being, authentic, having a natural conversation. You don't want it to be too staged or too formal. And you'll see over time that your listenership grows. So, I remember we had 100 listeners per episode to begin with, and now we've got 6,000, 7,000 listeners a month. And that really has come over time. You have to be patient and keep plugging at it. And yeah, your listeners will keep coming back to you if you're generating lots of good content, but it's time consuming above all else. But I would recommend doing it if there's anything that you're, writing based or anything else that you're really passionate about. Research, find out what is out there, and find a niche. And yeah, definitely go and podcast about things because it's great fun.
So obviously, I feel like with the new generation, social media is something that helps a lot of people build their brand. With new writers, how do you think they could use their social media to kind of build up their image? And what tips would you give for using their social media to build their image?
Yeah, it's something that we get asked about a lot because we have a mixture of different writers coming to us at different points in their lives, and some people feel very comfortable on social media and online, and others really haven't dipped into that at all and are quite just don't feel very confident, are quite worried about it really. And so we've had a number of sort of conversations with I say experts, people who have got some really great experience under their belts with building a writing brand online. So two people that come to mind, if you go on the Writing Life podcast way back, it might be last year, we had Lena Norms on the podcast, who's a prominent booktuber. So she has a YouTube channel and she reviews books and talks about books and writing. And we've got a conversation on our podcast, which is free to listen to, where she talks about developing and maintaining an online presence for your writing. And she says that self-promotion nowadays is not just for self-published writers. So a lot of traditional publishing houses rely on their writers to promote their own work too. And that, try and find, even if it's just one social media channel that you feel comfortable with, you don't have to set up a profile across every single platform and be on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter and everything. Even if it's just one, find a platform that you can set up a profile on. You don't have to be on there all the time, but just check in on it, semi-regularly, just to see if anyone sent you any questions or queries, or to respond to positive feedback that writers or readers might be sending to you. And it's just checking in, and I think Lena says it's almost like having another email address, another inbox. It's a way for people to connect with you online, especially your readers, and to have a conversation with you directly. We've also got, I think it's fully booked actually, but we've got a session coming up soon, another online 2-hour session with Jen Campbell, who is a writer, and she also has I think she has a YouTube channel as well, and I know she's been on podcasts and she leads workshops, and she's one of these writers who has really developed her brand and kind of pops up everywhere across different websites and social media platforms all the time. And she's doing a 2-hour workshop with us about how to build your brand and how to branch out and earn a living, as a full-time sort of writer and creative person, and how to sort of really I'd anchor, just grab those different platforms and use them to your advantage. So I am going to grab an interview with Jen after that fully booked workshop actually. So I think around sort of June time, my conversation with her will go up on the podcast too, where she'll be giving some tips about how to build your brand online. But I guess one other thing I would say is that Twitter, for us, from our perspective as an organisation and a writing kind of brand, Twitter's really great for meeting other writers and publishers and industry professionals online. There's a huge amount of conversation being had about writing and publishing and reading on Twitter all the time. So we find Twitter particularly useful. So I think that's what I would say from my limited perspective as someone who isn't a writer with my own writing publisher brand, but we do have a number of sort of articles and podcasts on our website where we tackle that in particular.
So obviously with COVID and everything, a lot of people they've been struggling a lot. They've been going through like mental problems and kind of lost motivation. But we like to say on the positive side, do you think there's anything good or better that has come out whilst everyone has been in a pandemic?
You're absolutely right. I think with anything sort of difficult or negative, it always brings opportunities for change and to look at the way you're doing things and to try and make the best of the situation, I suppose. And certainly for us and for other similar organisations in the literature sector, I mean, it's been a really interesting time for us to just take some stock and think, you know, how can we reach people when we can't kind of be together? So I think from our perspective, delivering work online, you know, we've had access to writers and experts and readers all across the world. As Steph already said, you know, Discord has brought us a whole new set of readers and writers. In fact, this is how we are connected with you. I believe it was via Lolita and Simon. And so, you know, rainbows, you know, with every cloud a rainbow. So yes, it's brought us to lots of new readers and writers to our work and us to their work as well. It's enabled us to, you know, conduct interviews and to conduct events that wouldn't have been able to happen otherwise. So for example, we would have had an event just around about this time last year, actually. We were going to be having an event with an American writer called Jenny Ophil, who's an absolutely wonderful writer. She wasn't able to come, and so we were able to do a podcast with her via the power of the internet. So we were finding ways to kind of stay connected even so. I think that the international online community has been a big one for us. It's absolutely not to say that those international communities aren't really important to our work, and we do lots of work with international partners and international friends across the world. But I think because of this way of working, and by the nature of the year that we've just had being less able to focus on our building and on what it means to be based in Norwich, we've therefore kind of, you know, done more stuff with an international community, both sort of online and hopefully in the future. And I think as well, just being able to attend things. I don't know about all of you. I have attended festivals this year in Melbourne and in America and in China, and I've been all over the place from the comfort of my own sofa. So personally, that's been amazing. Like as a programmer, you know, I'm program director. Being able to kind of go and see how everybody else is doing it has been utterly wonderful. Kind of lit festival tourism. I'd recommend it. I've just booked a ticket to an event, which I probably would have gone to in person in Galway in Ireland. And I'm not going to be able to, and fine, but it's with Maggie Nelson, who I love. And so there's definitely a real opportunity for us as readers and fans and writers, you know, because that's how you grow and learn and build your communities, is to go to these festivals and listen to people who've been there before you all. So certainly I've been making the most of that as a festival fan. And I know that we've been able to kind of really make the most of that in our own work. So with our crime writing festival, which happens in September, we had some wonderful events. We had a brilliant lecture from the crime writer Attica Locke. And, you know, again, in Norwich, we would have had, you know, it would have been very busy and very great. But because we were delivering it online, we were able to have thousands of people tune in. So that's a real positive for us to reflect on and to think, how do we continue to work in this way when things go back to normal? You know, we really want to use what we've learned and make sure that we're still able to deliver our work for people all over the world. And that even things that do happen in Dragon Hall, how do we share those much more widely? So yeah, lots to reflect on that's been positive. I've learned to knit. That's not been a positive. My knitting's really not very good, but you know, got to start somewhere. So yeah, yeah.
Some question from our viewers. One is, are you connected with the University of East Anglia?
East Anglia, yeah, we are. We do lots of things in partnership with the University of East Anglia, yeah.
Where do we begin, really? We have Just as so we're both based in Norwich. Yeah, so the University of East Anglia is based in Norwich, and we're in Norwich as a UNESCO City of Literature. And just a few examples. So we work with UEA on a series of online workshops called Creative Writing Online, which you can find on our website. They're tutor-led courses, so you can book 12 or 24-week online courses in fiction, poetry, crime writing, screenwriting, all of these kinds of things. And yeah, the great thing is that because they're online, you can obviously access them at any time of day from anywhere with internet. You've got your small sort of your small class, you've got about 15 students with you. So you've got these people to chat with and share your writing exercises with and get feedback from, but you've also got one-to-one contact with the tutor. And they feed back on your work every fortnight. You submit an assignment and they give you, personalized feedback on your work, which is something that a lot of online courses can't always offer. And those tutors are often selected by UEA, and UEA helps us to design that course. So that's very much a partnership between us and UEA. What else do we do? We've got a suite of awards called the Early Career Awards, which includes the Desmond Elliott Prize, which is of course a really big prize for debut fiction writers in the UK and Ireland. But we also run the UEA New Forms Award with them, which is an award, an annual award that goes to a writer who's working in what would you call it, like a hybrid kind of way, sort of experimenting with form or with...
Yeah, sort of for people whose work doesn't necessarily fit neatly between the bookshelves, let's say, for work that's sort of pushing the edges of what's possible and really sort of and as Steph says, pushing form, pushing ambition, kind of really, really taking experimentation to the next level.
Yeah. On Norwich Crime Writing Festival that Peggy mentioned every September, that's very much a co-partnership with UEA as well. So UEA's got a fantastic creative writing school, but they've also got as part of that a crime writing MA, which is, I think, is it the first or is it the only crime writing MA? Big deal. It's a big deal. They have some fantastic sort of associate professors and things that get on board with that course, and so we work on programming that festival every year together. And they come to Dragon Hall a lot for lots of conferences and events. There are so many events and courses that we run in partnership with them, and it just feeds into the sort of bigger, wider UNESCO City of Literature community. We've got so many publishing houses, actually independent publishing houses in our area. One of the bigger sort of areas outside of London to have that many sort of publishing houses in one place, and independent bookshops. We've got the British Centre for Literary Translation. So there's a whole creative writing and literary community happening in Norwich, which is really, really lovely. And we work with UEA a lot. So that's also a plug to come to Norwich if you've never visited us before. When we can travel again, you have to come and visit us and see all of the lovely places.
Another question is, have you seen an uptick in traffic during lockdown?
I would say yes. We ran a whole campaign when we first went into lockdown. We were quite lucky in a way in that we did already run some online courses, and we had the podcast and things. So we were already speaking to writers kind of across the world digitally. But we did also have to look at transferring a lot of our in-person events and courses online quite quickly. And yeah, I'd say we've definitely found, sort of attendance at our events in person have always been great. And we've always had a really lovely community and people traveling from, London and further afar to come to our festivals. I'd say we've definitely found during lockdown that we've been able to keep people sort of connected and feeling creative. And as Peggy mentioned before, our Norwich lecture with Attica Locke, we would have had a good few hundred people there, but the number of people that could tune in from the US and from other countries who, never would have been able to access our program before, it's been really fantastic actually. And the Discord community sort of really boomed because of lockdown. So I would say, yeah, I think it's actually been, I think, when we first went into lockdown, personally, I was, you feel quite worried about what's going to happen. It's entirely new and different. You're working from home. you know, how are you going to run things online? Is everyone just going to be really overwhelmed? Is there going to be an appetite for things? And there have been lots of really nice positives actually to this period. As much as I'd, you know, like to be back in Dragon Hall, I think hopefully Peggy can share in my enthusiasm that it's been a really nice way to especially broaden the number of people that are interacting with us. It's, you know, I think we've got a really great local, dedicated local following, national and international following, but it's grown a lot more, I would say, in the past year.
I feel as though you have inspired some people and done a wonderful job, because 2 questions is, first, is your Discord channel free to join, or is it a subscription based? And the second is, how what platforms do you recommend for podcasts? So I feel like you've done a wonderful job inspiring our viewers.
So glad to hear it. Well, I dropped a link to Discord in the chat. Actually, you'll find that there. It's completely free to join. Completely free to join. I think I'm just double checking. Actually, I'm clicking to join to see how many people are on there at the moment. 1,025 members. That is how many writers from across the world are currently on Discord, which is lovely. And as I say, it operates almost like a chat room. So you have different chat channels for different things, and we have, you know, an area for sort of sharing writing exercises and taking part in writing sprints. We have sort of book recommendations. We've got the book club channel. I think there's a special channel for people who've signed up as students to our sort of creative writing online courses. There's tons and tons going on there, and we're thinking all of the time of new ways that we can get people involved in Discord and new creative things that we can do on there, which is really lovely. So yeah, Discord's completely free to join. And then the podcast. So we use for our how do I explain it? So for our podcast, it's hosted on a website called Podbean, which is, I think we do pay a subscription. It's not very much. I think it's maybe £10-15 a month to have a kind of profile on there, and that's where you upload all of your episodes onto Podbean, and you can add, you know, images and, you know, descriptions and tags so people can find it. And then the great thing is that automatically plugs into pretty much every single podcast app that you can get. So once I upload the episode to Podbean and hit publish, that goes out through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, all of the different podcast apps that people might use. So it's automatically there across everything, and everyone can access it from any platform. So if someone says, how can I listen to your podcast? I mean, take your pick. You can download whichever podcast app you like, and you will find us on there, which is really useful. And I think there's a few other places. There's Podbean. I'm trying to remember what the other one's called now. I can't remember, but I'm
involved with the podcast. We host it on SoundCloud. It does a similar job of sort of pushing it out onto all the different kind of subscriber places.
Yeah, SoundCloud's a really good place to do that as well, actually. Yeah, and I think again there's a sort of minimal payment that you have to pay. I mean, a lot of these places do have a free option as well, but you can pay a small amount and it kind of reaches more people, and you get some really good analytics, so you can kind of see who's accessing your podcast from where. So if you have a Google, there's a couple of sort of main contenders. I think SoundCloud's up there. Podbean is the one that we use.
So I feel like it's a well-known thing that being an author and being a writer is quite a hard industry to get at the top. But in your opinion, how viable is it to be a writer for a full-time job?
It's a toughie.
Do you want to go, Steph? Shall I go?
Peggy, you go. Your turn.
I mean, yeah, it's like all the creative industries, I suppose. We would be unwise to say, oh, it's really easy. Of course, it is a challenge, you know. But I think that what's really exciting and good news is that there's not one route to being a writer, as we already said. Lots of different ways to be a writer in the world. And as well as that, there's lots of different ways to kind of earn money as a writer now. You know, I think that the writers that we work with, a lot of them have very broad portfolio careers. So yes, they're writing the novel, or they're working on the poetry collection, or whatever the kind of the thing they're working on is, but they're teaching creative writing. they're chairing events, and that's something you can get paid for at panels or at festivals. They're judging prizes, that's something you can get paid for. They're appearing at festivals, you get paid for that. So they're kind of, I mean, and lots more things. I mean, they're appearing on the radio, they're being invited onto podcasts, they're building this kind of like sort of portfolio way of making their writing work for them in the world. So I don't want to say to you, yes, it's super easy. It takes hard work, it takes luck and opportunism. You've got to,
Hi everyone, this is going to be a slightly different video.
Oh, hello. You've got to write something brilliant, and you've got to, that's the main first thing. But there are lots of ways of building a career and being a writer. So don't positives. I think definitely a good time. There's a lot of ways that writers can be involved in. If you think even 30 years ago, there weren't literary festivals in the same way that there are now, which is a real way for writers to be in the world and to make money from their work. Steph, if I missed, is anything you wanted to add?
I don't think so, no. I just, it kind of reminds me of some really nice, I say, success stories. Again, we've had Kate Worsley, for example, is a writer that I first came to know through Escalator, our talent development program, because she was on there writing her, I think it was her second book actually, but she was in the middle of writing a book and she joined that talent development scheme to get some sort of one-to-one mentoring, some help with her writing. And then now, a few years later, she's been back as a mentor on that scheme, and she's being, paid to assist another writer and to sort of share her knowledge. And I know that she does lots of other sort of, bits and pieces like that on the side. And there are just numerous occasions where we've sort of touched base with someone, they've been to a workshop or part of a program that we've been involved with, and then we see them further down the line doing something else, which just shows that, the way that your kind of career can develop and you end up sharing the knowledge that you have. It's really Megan Bradbury is another one that I think of, who is she was on Escalator with us, and now she tutors on one of our courses, and she's judged things before, and she's amazing. And it's just you often see people come back around because they've got their fingers in all these different pies, and they're doing lots of bits and pieces, and they're still writing and doing fabulously with their work and getting their work published and connecting to readers at the same time.
So I think a more direct question is, do you have any advice for middle-aged writers? I know a lot of people we hear kind of emerging, they're quite young. So he said that I keep hearing that publishers aren't interested in people over 40, which I think on my side isn't true, but do you have any advice for the older writers?
I'm sorry that's been the experience that this person's had. I mean, we personally don't put an age on the idea of being emergent, because you can emerge at any age. But we knew writers. There was a person who attends our salon. I mean, she emerged at the age of 80 and published her first book. So any age is absolutely legitimate, and I'm sorry that you were put off by that publisher. I hope that things are getting a bit better in the industry. I see a lot more people pushing back on that kind of thing, prizes and so on that have age limits attached to them. But advice is just keep going, don't be put off, write the very best thing that you can, keep putting your work into the world, build your networks, try and keep your confidence there, just keep doing it, don't let it put you off, I think would be my advice.
We're quite lucky in a way in that, because we're working behind the scenes. We see a lot of different people, and we know that people are getting their work published and launching their first debut book or collection at any age. We see that all the time, kind of behind the scenes. But I guess when you're writing alone and you're sort of checking social media or whatever, sometimes you don't get to see just the breadth of different writers who are really plugging away at it, as you say, from very different different ages, different backgrounds, very different situations. So rest assured that there's absolutely no age limit on it, definitely. And a lot of our opportunities are kind of open to anyone of any age, aren't they? And it is just it can be a bit of a slog. And that's part of when I was saying sort of common questions and roadblocks and things that come up. A lot of people, one of their biggest things is how do I keep going? I need the the confidence and the boost to kind of carry on, and often connecting with other writers can be quite a key part of that, to have someone sort of cheering for you in the background and telling you to keep on going.
So we're going to start wrapping up, but one final question I have, more aimed towards Peggy, was that you mentioned you're a bibliotherapist, something along those lines. So has there been one book that you've been recommending a lot of people, or one book that you'd want to recommend everyone, one of your favorites?
Oh my goodness, Yasmin, that's such a hard question, because what to say? I mean, a book that it would across the year, it really depends where people are in their reading, I suppose. So, for example, some people really, when they're feeling anxious, they want to read of a similar experience, I suppose. So, a book, the person I mentioned, Jenny Offill's book, is really interesting for that, because it is about a really anxious moment, and some people took a lot of comfort in that, in reading about somebody else going through a similar time. I think for me, I recommend Rebecca Solnit a lot. I don't know if people here read Rebecca Solnit. She's got a beautiful book which is called Hope in the Dark. She's a non-fiction writer. She writes she wrote another book called Men Explain Things to Me. She writes a lot about feminism and about her lived experience, but Hope in the Dark is a really beautiful book. It's about what is hope and how do you hold on to it when things feel really hard. And I think that's a book that sort of really resonated with people this year, which has been a really, really hard year. And how do you kind of locate hope and hold on to it and work towards it? So I would say that's, oh goodness, I feel the pressure to think of, there's so many books I could recommend. Oh, I'll tell you a beautiful book. Derek Owusu's It Reminds Me was our Desmond Elliott Award winner last year. That is a stunning book. It's just a stunning book. Difficult in places, a challenging book, but beautiful. I could go on, but I think if you only choose two books, then those are two books I would say are fab.
Yeah, right. Well, I have had a wonderful time talking to both of you. You can find the links on our social media to the National Centre of Writing website, and I will be posting it again just to make sure everyone can see it. Just to remind everyone that we have another event at 5:30, a writing event, I believe with David Cottis, or another one of our amazing guest speakers. You can check our event list, but I have had a wonderful time speaking to you, and I wish everyone a good evening.